Hi there everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and I'm excited to bring you the 31st episode of Mixed Media, The Paper Wishes Way. Today we're going on a bit of an adventure with a steampunk-inspired collection from Stamperia called Sir Vagabond. Now you might remember Lady Vagabond from the Mixed Media number 29 episode. So if you like that look and style, you will definitely love these supplies. I have 4 card projects to share with you using the Sir Vagabond pattern papers, rice papers, stencil, and die cuts. And we'll look at some fun ways to put these to use. As you can see, we have a lot to explore today. I'm so glad that you're here. Come play with us. Let's take a closer look at the Sir Vagabond collection, and we can begin with our pattern papers. So this set has 10 double-sided sheets in an 8" by 8" size. You'll have over 50 cutout messages and embellishments in here too, plus some all-over patterns. And you can see that the theme is steampunk. It's got some travel elements, vintage maps and compasses. It's a bit of sci-fi and adventure. It is a very, very cool look. I really, really like this. Now we've also got 2 sheets of rice paper in the collection. So we have the New York map, which has this big, beautiful map on here. Then you also have these 4 little cutouts, tag cutouts down here at the bottom. Then we also have the vintage travel. Take a look at this. This is very, very cool. Now we've been using a lot of rice paper in the webisodes, but if you're new to it, it's kind of like a lightweight pattern paper, maybe a cross between a tissue paper and a mulberry paper. You can tear it and layer it, and it really adds a lot of dimension. And I'll demonstrate how to use this today. Then we also have a pack of chipboard die cuts, and you'll get yours as a package. But I thought it might be easier if you could see all of the elements here. So I've got them all glued down onto a piece of paper, actually 2 pieces of paper. So you can see there are all different sizes. You've got some card focal elements here. You've got wings, you've got compasses, got some hot air balloons, you've got Sir Vagabond himself, and here are more from that same package. It's a really beautiful collection. And I like that you're getting elements that are all different sizes and shapes too. So some really cool and very easy elements to add onto your cards. Now the last thing I want to show you for this collection are 2 stencils. Now I don't have the Traveler stencil, which is this one that you see here. So I printed it off for you so that you could take a look. Now it will be, when you get yours, it'll be the same size as the Wallpaper and Compass stencil. They're both about 6" by 8". But I wanted you to be able to see this all over gorgeous design. So both of these can be used in sections. So you could stencil just a portion of either of these, which I'll show you today. You can also use them as your background elements too. So these all fit with the Sir Vagabond theme, but I think they would also be great with lots of other types of projects and themes as well. So again, both stencils measure about 6" by 8". Super easy to use and really gorgeous designs. Okay, now that we've seen all the fun things that we're working with today, let's take a look at how to use them. This card shows just how easy it is to combine the elements in this collection. Now the Sir Vagabond set is from Stamperia designer Antonis Zanidakis from Athens, Greece. And he has a really unique mixed media style, and it brings in all of these themes of travel and adventure. And when he develops a collection like this, he makes it really easy to put the elements together so you know everything is going to coordinate. So this collection is very steampunk inspired, as I mentioned earlier, and some folks might kind of wonder what that means. So basically, steampunk is a fantasy style that imagines the future through the lens of the Victorian era. So that's when steam power really dominated. And the best description I've heard is the future imagined by the past. So kind of how Victorian era people might have envisioned, say, travel and technology through their own lens. So you'll see a lot of things like the hot air balloons and some other imaginary sorts of ways of traveling, definitely steam powered. You'll also have the combination of other elements like machinery, plus top hats and old-fashioned clothing, So a little bit of the past and a little bit of the future. And so you can see a lot of this represented just in this one sheet of cutouts from that 8x8 paper pack. And this card is a good example of how this theme can come together. So you can see this old world map paper, which I absolutely love. I've used that just to cover my card front. And I've added a border strip of pattern paper here and a cutout label, which is the perfect stage for my Sir Vagabond focal. So you can tell Sir Vagabond is a steampunk style with his top hat and his funky goggles, and he's got a cravat and some very old-fashioned clothing, but he also looks just quite quirky and modern too. Now the other elements here are from the die cut collection as well as Sir Vagabond here. I've got those up on foam tape for a little bit more dimension. And then the only other elements I used were some green and white cardstock and a little bit of jute twine just to soften this. And for my card inside, I have more of that gorgeous pattern paper plus another cutout from the paper pack and another die cut. And I really love how these elements all work together so nicely. And all of the papers in this paper pack have kind of a neutral color palette, but there's also a little bit of blue and kind of some sea green in here as well. So you can pull those colors out too, and we'll talk about how you can do that when we get to the stenciling demo. Okay, I have another card I want to show you, and this one is also using the papers and the die cuts, plus some of the rice paper, which is right here in the center. So let's take a look at how to use this. Rice paper is a really great medium for layering. It's super easy to use, and you can place it onto plain cardstock or onto pattern paper as I've done here. It's kind of like tissue paper in that it's translucent, so patterns will show through. And here you can see the hot air balloon rice paper tag from the New York map mounted onto a label from the paper pack. So you can see here, these are both of the rice paper sheets in today's collection. This is the New York map, and when I flip it over, you can see some of those white fibers in there. That's kind of what makes me think of mulberry paper. But of course, you've got this rich, beautiful patterned and detailed design on here. Now in this case, you've got the map. You've also got the tags down here, which is what I used for my card. So you can cut rice paper with scissors. You can also tear it. Now, if you want to tear it, I suggest you use a damp paintbrush or maybe a water brush and just get that a little bit wet, and then you'll sort of draw along the outside edge of the section that you want to tear. And this will make it much, much easier. You just kind of gently separate the piece from the background. And if you bump into any of those fibers, then you can just snip those with scissors. That's pretty easy to do. So here we go. I've almost got this one torn out. And there we go. So that you could put this onto either cardstock or pattern paper. So let's take a look at how to do this. So I'm going to bring in a piece of this beautiful pattern paper, and I'm just going to add my tag on here. So you can see if I put it on the green, it's going to have a greenish tinge. If I put it up here where it's bluer, that's going to start showing through. So that's kind of fun. You can play with the positioning on this. Now all you need to do is glue it to your surface with some white glue, and I use the Creative Expressions Cosmic Acrylic Glue for this. And what I'll do is just get this a little bit watery. So I'll use a larger brush that's been soaking. I've got this in a jar of water, so it's not really too watery, but it's just enough to make that go across my paper a little bit more smoothly. Okay, so I'm just going to put this down right onto my pattern cardstock and then pop this down here. Smooth it out, work from the center and then smooth out. And if you want to, you can add a little bit more glue around the outside edges. Now, if you've ever done sort of traditional decoupage and you've used tissue paper and you get air bubbles, the nice thing about rice paper is that you don't have any of those issues at all. And then as soon as this dries, you are ready to add it onto your card. Okay, so let me bring back in my card and we can take another look at this. Now I've used this gorgeous aquamarine pattern paper as my background, and then I layered this centerpiece of compass pattern paper. So you can see how everything is coordinating, and it's just so easy to combine these elements. Now I've got another strip of map paper here, and then my card focal. I've got lots of these little die cut elements here, and you'll notice in the placement that I've positioned them overlapping the borders and the focal. And this kind of helps lead the eye through the layout of the card. Then for my card inside, I have another rice paper tag, again mounted onto a paper label from the 8x8 paper pack, and a couple more die cuts. And the rice paper is really nice too, because not only does it add another layer to your card, but it also introduces a different texture because it's actually quite soft. And so not only is it beautiful and a great mixed media element, but it's also really simple to do. Okay, let's take a look at another great addition to this collection, which is one of my favorites, stencils. For this card, I'm using the Wallpaper and Compass stencil, and you can see it works perfectly with this Vagabond collection, but I'm kind of thinking that this will look really pretty with other themes too. Okay, so I'm going to grab my stencil and show you one of my favorite techniques, which is combining dye inks together using a blending tool. Okay, so I've got a piece of plain white cardstock here. I've got my stencil. Now keep in mind that the stencil has so many different elements in here, so I can really play with which area I want to capture. So I'm going to kind of position this here so that we can get that compass. I'll place this down, and I'm using some of the hunky-dory stencil tape just to secure things in place, just to make it a little bit easier. Now, for this technique, I want to work with two different dye-based ink pads. So I'm using the Prism dye inks from Hunky Dory, and I'm using Thundercloud, and then I'm also going to use some French Navy. And then I've got my little hot off the press blending tool. So I'm going to start with the lighter of my colors, which is the Thundercloud. Let's move this down a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to start with this, and I just pick up some of the color onto my blending brush, and then I'm just gently applying this through the stencil, and kind of tap and re-ink my blending tool, and then just kind of come along here. And so after I've added my Thundercloud, let's come back in. I'm not cleaning my brush in between. I'm just going to pick up some of that French Navy and work in some of this color too. So I'm overlapping some elements. I'm going to get a nice blend of colors. You can do this with some really soft kind of tone-on-tone shades like we're doing here, but it also looks really nice if you're combining some brighter colors. Okay, so you can do as much or as little as you want, and then when you lift this off, you can see that you've got a really cool design in lots of different shades, going from light to dark and blending out. So really cool. Now, if you want to, you can pop this back down and say, I need a little bit more of that Thundercloud. I'm just going to come back with that dirty brush and add a little bit more in here. And let's take a look. There we go. Very cool. So this is what I've used on the front of this card. So I've got my simple border here with pattern paper. Most of this is right onto a piece of white cardstock that I glued onto the front of my card. And I've also got a smaller border here, same from the paper pack, and I like to add that in between here. I think it just adds a little bit of polish. Then I've got my label cut out from the paper pack, and I have Sir Vagabond again as my card focal, along with some overlapping die cuts. I've got a little bit of jute twine, and that's really all you need to create your card front. Then for the card inside, again, I've got another strip of that pattern paper, some more of the die cuts, and a Dream Big cutout. This is also from the paper pack. Okay, now speaking of our stenciling, you can also combine your stenciling with your rice paper, which is what I've done here. And again, using the same Wallpaper and Compass stencil, just using a different section of the stencil. So again, if you take a look at the stencil, You'll notice we've got the compass here. We've got kind of a wallpaper design here in the top. And then it sort of changes into this floral motif over here. So it's a really beautiful continuation of patterns, but it's almost like you've got 3 stencils in one. Again, you could use the entire piece as a background, but you can also section out different elements. And let me show you. Again, we'll look at the 2 of these together. So you would hardly think that it is the same stencil from this to this. But this area here is that same stencil, only stenciled with black ink on top of a rice paper background. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, I'm going to grab a piece of that rice paper that I've just glued down onto a piece of white cardstock. And then I'm going to grab my stencil here and just position this on top. I'm going to use a different area. Let's see, I'm going to use this area right here. And grab my tape, same tape I used before. I like to reuse it till it's not sticky anymore. And then I'm going to bring in some, oops, not the French Navy, we already used that, Midnight Black. Okay, so I'm going to use Midnight Black, and I'm using a different tool for this one, just because I like to have one tool that I use for very dark colors like black, and then the other ones I kind of keep for other colors. But because the black I use so frequently, I don't really wash the blending brush that often. So I may as well just keep it for that one color. Okay, and again, same process as before. Just blending that on. Now you can start with a light touch and add more if you want to, or go for it. Okay, pop the cap back on there and then slide this off, and you can see it looks gorgeous on top of patterned paper. Well, patterned rice paper and patterned regular paper. And in fact, I've used the same stencil. This time I was working with Blue Lagoon, and I just kind of wanted to experiment and see how that would look on patterned paper, and I quite like the extra depth that you're able to get from that. Okay, so I'm going to bring back in my card again, and we can take another look at this. So here I've got my stenciled border on here. I've got my card focal. This is that globe, and then also the wings. Now the wings are die cuts as well as the globe, but they're all separate, so they don't come together. You have the globe and then you have the 2 wings separately. And I just layered them one on top of the other so that you can create some of your own effects too. And that's what I really love about those wings. And then I've also got some additional elements on here. Here's one of the sentiments, more of that beautiful patterned paper. And then on the inside, we've got Sir Vagabond himself. And again, with another die cut and another sentiment. This is one of the cutouts from the paper pack. Okay, so these are our techniques for today. We've done rice paper, we've done stenciling, we've done stenciling with rice paper, all with a very cool steampunk twist from our friends at Stamperia. Thank you for joining me today, and a really big thank you for being part of the Paper Wishes family. We're so glad that you're here with us. I can't wait to see what you create, so do be sure to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.